wasting my time. I've watched others go by long enough. Now you're on the line. You've had me stopped when the light was green, blind when I should have seen ahead. The light was red.
In 1968, St. Louis band the Aerovons were getting noticed in clubs around town. Still in high school, their leader and singer Tom Hartman was composing the songs. The band was being managed by Tom's mother, Maurine. She was determined to see her son and his bandmates make it big. Tom was 16 years old when he, his band, and his manager Mom made their first pilgrimage to England with demos in search of a record deal. They signed with Parlophone, but were asked to head back to St. Louis and write more material. A year later, the boys entered EMI Studio Two to record their debut album, unaware that next door, in Studio One, their heroes the Beatles were recording their classic album, Abbey Road. Parlophone released some singles by the Aerovons, but problems among band members resulted in them falling apart. For several decades, their album Resurrection stayed in a vault before RPM in England released it on CD. Now, this legendary album has been remastered and reissued on vinyl. Stay tuned to hear the story of the Aerovons, as told by its founder and leader, Tom Hartman.
The light was red.
You're listening to Frets with DJ Faye. No lessons, no technique info. I just talk to people who play guitar. Stay tuned. Well, Tom Hartman, how are you?
Great, Dave. Nice to be on your show.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. Well, for the listeners, I'm here as usual in St. Louis, where it all began for the Aerovons. But Tom is joining us from his current place of residence down in Florida.
Yes, I am. Yep. I've been down here since 75.
Wow. Okay, well, I want to go back to your early years. At a very young age, you were drawn to the sound of a guitar when you heard a guitar solo on the song Gingerbread by Frankie Avalon.
That's absolutely true. And I remember hearing it to this day and where I was. And I was in a car and I came on the radio and my dad was driving and I said, "Dad, what is that?" And he said, "Well, that's an electric guitar." And my quest from then on was to find out, what do you mean it's electric? And I wanted to find out everything about it. I was probably only 6, something like that, because this must have been 58 or 59. And so, yeah, that's really what got me hooked on the sound of guitar, literally that solo.
It drew you in.
Yeah, it sure did. And it wasn't long after that, I heard Bird Dog by the Everly Brothers.
Yeah.
I heard the beginning of that record with the acoustics playing that progression. And I said, that's another kind of guitar, right? I really got caught up on guitar in those days.
Well, what other music do you remember liking around that time when you were just starting to discover music?
Well, I used to wait until I'd watch the Ozzy and Harriet show and wait till the end of the show when they would always have Rick do a song. And, James Burton would come in with the Telecaster and do Hello, Mary Lou, or in particular, a song called Young World really impressed me, the solo on that. And, so I was a big fan of that. And then soon after that is when I first heard the Beach Boys and Surfing USA and all that. By then I was kind of on my way. I had already, I started spending inordinate about amounts of time in my bedroom with a little record player trying to learn how to play that stuff. And, you know, back then, no YouTube, no teachers.
Right, right.
You figure it out yourself. And I was encouraged a lot by my parents, and I was lucky enough to get a. They saw how dedicated I was to this, and they got me lessons at Mel Bay
Hmm.
over in Kirkwood. And I was lucky enough to get a young guy teacher there who I had the audacity in my first couple lessons to come in with a copy of the Everly Brothers' new single at the time, which was Temptation, which is loaded with guitars doing all manner of things. And I said, I want to learn. I remember saying, I want to learn how to play like this. And instead of him saying, well, let's slow down now, nothing, he was very encouraging. And he played the first part. And I said, like that stuff there. And he goes, well, they're kind of doing something like this. And he pretty much played what they were playing on the record.
Wow.
And so that just made me have so much faith in him. And he said, so, you can see I know what you want to do and I'll help you get there, but let's start here and we'll work toward that. So I was very encouraged by, by that and by my parents thinking, oh, Tom sounds good on guitar. So, I came from a musical family where my sister was a really great classical pianist, and I was hearing classic piano being played all day in the summer afternoons when I was young, and then going back in my room and listening to Gingerbread or whatever. So it was a musical house.
Yeah. My dad got to know Mel Bay. My dad played,
Really?
my dad played harmonica, but
Huh?
he took me, I'm trying to remember how old I was. I was pretty young, still living with my parents. And I remember that shop in Kirkwood, and Mel was
Yep.
there the day that my dad, the first time he took me there.
I believe he was in a wheelchair when I was there. I think he was.
That sounds right. I kind of remember that too. I know he was
Yeah.
sitting.
Yeah, but he was Mel Bay, so I was a little scared. I don't know if I ever said a word to him. I just went back and got my lesson, but that's wild.
Yeah.
You were there too.
Mel Bay became a millionaire from those guitar instruction books. Boy.
Oh my gosh. I still remember the terrible hitting all six exercise.
Yeah.
And said, I can't read these ledger lines. They're too far below the staff's help. But yeah, that was my kind of upbringing. So I was already kind of really entrenched in listening to all manner of pop music, and also while listening to all the guitar work and those records and things, I became really hooked on the harmonies and
Oh, yeah.
Everly Brothers, Beach Boys, all that stuff. It was just fascinating to me. And so it ended up in my music too, because I tend to write melodically and try to get as much harmony in it and kind of tasteful guitar parts. I'm not a Jimi Hendrix. I'm not a shredder. So I try to think of parts that will, help the song and not put a big spotlight on, wow, listen to how fast he, I
Yeah.
never really did that.
Well, you're from St. Louis, but didn't the family move back and forth from
We did.
Florida a couple times, or
Yeah.
maybe once or twice?
Yeah, my mom loved South Florida, loved Fort Lauderdale. And my dad just couldn't make a living down here. So we'd come down here for a year or something. And, he'd say, Maurine, we got to go back to St. Louis. So it was tough for me, but it was kind of meant to be because we hadn't moved down here, particularly in fall of '64, where I spent about a year going to eighth grade down here. Probably I wouldn't have had a band like the Aerovons or anything else, because I saw a band that was older than me, that was, 17, 16, whatever. They were seniors. That's what it was.
Hmm.
And they played on Friday nights down here, and their name was the Aerovons. So Chuck, who is still a friend, with Chuck Kirkpatrick, who he ended up at Criteria Studios. He was on the Layla album, all that, doing engineering stuff. He's a longtime vet, real good guitar player and singer. And I befriended him, and I would kind of in between their songs go, Chuck, how do you play that part? He'll go, I'll show you on a break. I'll show you. So he was like my big brother. And when we found out we had to move back St. Louis, summer of '65, he wrote me and said, the Aerovons broke off. I'm starting a new group. It's more like the association. It's got a girl in it and stuff. And I said, hey, do you mind if I start a band up here named the Aerovons? And he said, it's fine with me. He said, we got the name from a band in New York called the Aerovons, and they got the name from the inside of a speaker cabinet that had a tweeter made by a company called Aerovox.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's how that happened.
That's great. It was passed on to you.
It really was. And the moving back and forth it turned out to be an important thing for me. But that year that I spent in 8th grade down here it was just so different, because I had come from Lindbergh Middle School, Lindbergh Junior High at the time it was called, and it was typical St. Louis or up north school. It's you change classes, you go down the hall and change classes. You're in a building. It's winter. It's dark. It's depressing, and you come down here. And when I went to school here, you left the classroom to change classes and walked outside, and you were outside walking down this walkway in the sun to your next class. So everything was bright and cheerful. 8 days a week was a brand new single. I Feel Fine was a brand new single. Life was good. So I really enjoyed it. And then we moved back to St. Louis, and I was back to dark depression at Melville Junior High School.
Wow.
So.
Well, early lineups of the band you formed were playing an interesting mix of songs, like stuff by Paul Revere and the Raiders, and the Easy Beats, and even the Kinks.
Yeah, you would know it from listening to that British album that's coming out here, because it's very soft, and we were kind of anything but. We're eclectic mix. I think we did do the Who. We were probably the first band in St. Louis to play My Generation. Everybody was like, why is he stuttering? It's like we were doing My Generation and Friday on My Mind and all the hits like Happy Together, and a good amount of Paul Revere and the Raiders. I was a big fan of theirs because of their harmonies, and they had great sounding guitars. They had 12 strings and kicks and stuff like that, and birds and all the usual stuff. Mainly a Brit invasion type band we were.
It was a great time for music. It was great.
It sure was. It's nothing like it. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Even bands like the Monkees had great singles like Last Train to Clarksville and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was a great time.
And you were the main singer-songwriter for the most part.
Yeah, I hadn't written any songs yet, but I was the one to form the band. And after going through a couple, as you mentioned, iterations of members, I finally landed on, I met Bob Frank, who is still a dear friend and in St. Louis up there. And he was a rhythm player at Bayless. We moved just far enough north on Union Road to land in Bayless instead of another year in Melville. So sophomore year was at Bayless, and that's where I met Bob and drummer Gary Gelshauser, and put the first kind of version of the Aerovons together. So that was all centered around Bayless and starting to play, CYCs and the high school dances and all that stuff, and on a small kind of level, playing strange places like what was then called Caveland out in Festus.
Oh, wow.
Have you heard of Caveland?
No.
So Caveland, you can look it up on the net, I think was turned into actually a residence, but it was a skating rink built inside a cave. And they started having dances there at Friday nights. So we said, all right, let's try to get booked there. And we'd end up going there, forgetting to consider that you guys just got booked in a cave. So it's not going to sound really good, Tom. But, we played there a few times and we started getting better and better gigs as the band got better and we switched members around several times. The story of bands, it's hard to find people that, find four people. It's like having two marriages all in one. And, one marriage is tough enough, but it's tough to find people who are dedicated and don't have girlfriends saying, you have to practice again this week, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it was a journey.
I could leave my mark in time. I could touch her hand and find I'm not alone. This I could show with her. There'd be time to spend with her.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey, I want to talk about Plug. Plug makes it easy for you to purchase the personal technology you need at 40 to 70% off retail pricing. What can you get from Plug? Certified pre-owned devices including iPhones, Androids, AirPods, Macs, smartwatches, accessories, and more. I originally didn't even want an Apple Watch, but I got one from Plug and I love it. I wear it every day. Your purchase is backed by their unmatched 1-year warranty and 30-day money-back guarantee. One more very cool thing, Plug is dedicated to helping reduce e-waste around the globe. To date, Plug has helped save over 1 million devices from reaching landfills, and they're looking to double that number by 2025. Link to Plug Tech from the show notes and enter code DJFAY to help support this podcast. Plug Electronics. Check it out. Well, the first demo by the Aerovons was cut, I think, in 1967.
It was actually, no, it would have been 68, early 68,
Okay.
I think. Yeah. My mom had ended up managing the group. She had no experience in such a thing, but she was she was a great talker and she could get into anybody. If you needed to do something and you said, yeah, but Mom, forget it, you can't get in there, she'd go, just what's the name? And the next thing you know, it'd be done. So she kind of heard us. There was an event that I think KXOK at the time sponsored.
Oh, wow.
Positive. But there was an event called The Last Train to Clarksville, where they were going to take a train and it would leave St. Louis, go to Clarksville, Missouri for a few hours, and then come back St. Louis. And in each car, a different well-known local band would be playing. And my mom one day heard us practicing downstairs and talking about it. And somebody in the van said, yeah, it'd be great to be able to get on that, but we're not really well known enough to get on that. And she said, what? And we told her, she said, just tell me about it and I'll see what I can do. And I was, nobody wants their mom to manage the band. So I'm like, Mom, can you just give me a soda and get Mike a sandwich or something? And they said, no, let her try it. Let her see what she can do for us. And, it was a matter of days before she said, you're booked. You're on the last train to Clarksville. So, at that point, she took over booking for us. And we played pretty much everywhere you could play that was worth playing in St. Louis. The big clubs there were, at the time, were called the Bat Cave and Castaways and Rainy Days Club. And all manner of high schools everywhere that had high school dances on the weekend. And, in fact, even seventh inning stretch at Busch Stadium during a Cardinals game. The Cardinals were Busch Stadium was having some kind of promotion or promo called Team Night, and bands would play, I guess, on the seventh inning stretch. So we got booked there. And yeah, so it was just, if eventually my mom just said, you guys have kind of done all you can do locally. And from what I understand, what you need to do is write your own song and record a demo of it. We'll try to get some money together and record a demo of it. And so that's what we did. I had remembered enough piano from being a kid during those gingerbread days. I took some piano lessons, and a friend said, I've got an old piano downstairs that's upright nobody wants in our family, so we could bring it over if you want. I said, great. So now everything was kind of pointing to me, the band and everything. They were all saying, well, Tom, write some music. Like, I would write some music. What are you talking about? I don't know. And, I was very blessed because it didn't take long after that piano got there that I wrote that song, World of You. And we decided, well, that's what we should demo. So we ended up starting there locally by getting a demo done of that song.
Well, someone at Capitol Records out in L.A. heard it and offered to record you out there.
What happened was it was a studio called Premier Recording Studio somewhere in St. Louis. And a couple old guys that were mainly recording, I guess, beer commercials and voiceovers and that stuff, not doing band work. But we recorded it there. And at the time, Capitol Records had a distribution center in St. Louis. And we get a call about a week later from one of the old guys that recorded us there. And he said, listen, one of the guys from Capitol stopped by our studio today. We work with him a lot, and we played him what we recorded the other day of you guys. And he's going to be calling you. And so we were excited. He ends up calling and saying, we liked what we heard here, and we know we can give you the name. I forgot how it was put, but we can give you the names or contacts of people out of Capitol who may be very interested in you. And to show you what a bullhead I was a dumb kid. And I just said, Mom, I don't want to record in California. I want to record at EMI, the Beatles studio, because, EMI owned Capitol. So we knew there was a relationship there. And we said, is there anyone in England at EMI? And, he was a little taken aback, as I recall. And he said, well, if that's the way Tom feels, then there's a man named Roy Featherstone and at EMI, and you can tell them that we put you in touch with them, and we wish you a lot of luck. So basically, with that name, we literally went to London and brought the demo to him. And he listened to it, and he looked up and said, I would do a single on that record. He said, I'm just amazed that a group from St. Louis wants to come all the way over here to record. He said, all of our artists want to come to America to record. I said, no, Beatles are fine. I would love to record here. So That's how it happened. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I think most people know, most listeners, that EMI ultimately became, the name was changed to Abbey Road Studios, I think in like 1976, but that's where the Beatles did their early recordings. It had a long history of being a recording studio.
Yeah, it did have a long history. Of course, we knew nothing about that. We just knew that's where they record. I want to record there. So
I'm envious you, well, obviously of this whole story, but I stood outside of Abbey Road, I guess about 10 years ago, and took some pictures and just, was in awe of just kind of being in that area and seeing the crosswalk and everything. But
we walked across that crosswalk many times, not knowing it would later be famous on the front of the album, At the time we were there, it was just a crosswalk. So, but what was great was that they were really nice to us and said, if you want, how did that happen? Oh, we were in the hotels over there while this was all going on and trying to get signed. And we basically were told by them, listen, if you're getting bored of the hotel, have you been out to any of the clubs or what they call discos at the time? And we said, yeah, we've been out to a bunch of them. And they said, have you been to Speakeasy? And we said, we tried, but they won't let us in. It's a private club. And they said, oh, we'll fix it up for you. Well, when would you like to go? We'll have your name at the door. So a couple of nights later, we went there. This is all building up to the huge high moment of my life up to that point. We went to Speakeasy, which is you took a few steps down off the street to go down to this underground kind of small looking club. And the whole idea of Speakeasy was it was a place celebrities could go and not get bothered by fans. So, that's why it was private. So when we went in, like a dummy, we're all signing ourselves in like a dumb kid. I said, is there anybody well known here tonight? Or some words to that effect. He said, Michael Caine was here earlier.
Wow.
And he said, Paul's here. And we're, our hearts just dropped. We said, Paul McCartney. And they said, yeah, this was here not long ago. And we said, thank you, signed in and went into the club. And the club reminded me of Batcave back in St. Louis. They had a bunch of tables. It was dark. There were candles on the tables, as I recall, and a little stage where various local British groups and sometimes, as it turned out, Deep Purple and Steppenwolf, well-known groups would play. But also in the back was a door going into a glassed-off area where people could eat and dine back there without it being as noisy. So we're sitting out in the bar part, which is scanning the whole place. Paul, is this even possible that he's in this room? And it's dark and you can't see. And at some point, the door from the dining area opened and there he was. And, we just froze, as you might guess. And the band said, go say anything. Just say something to me. I'm like, what am I supposed to say? And meanwhile, I'm finding myself walking closer and closer to me because all the cowards are in back of me, pushing me toward him. And I just found myself blathering like an idiot. Walked up to him and I said, Paul, excuse me. We're in a band and we came here from St. Louis and we're going to be recording at EMI. And we're huge fans. And we just wondered if you'd have a minute to answer a couple guitar questions or whatever. And he was so nice. He looked over and he said, oh, great. Yeah. And leaned up against his back against the glass window that separated the club from the dining area. And then, of course, the rest of the band comes right up to him now that they see it's okay. And he was just super. I don't remember everything we asked. I know I asked him a guitar question that turned out not to be true, but he was nice enough to answer it anyway. And I remember really wanting to know how they got the sound of the lead guitars in Nowhere Man. Back then, there wasn't the information that's out there now. So nobody knew anything, right? So I'm saying, do you remember how you got the guitar sounds in Nowhere Man? And he said, yeah, it was a Gretsch, I believe, which, a lot of top end added to it. I said, okay. So I had a Gretsch. I knew that was no Gretsch on the record. And, but whatever, we just kept talking to him. He's very sweet. And my friend Nolan, bass player Nolan, reaches over my shoulder with a card, our band card. It says the Aerovons Smashing English Sound on it and hands it over my shoulder to Paul and says, Paul, I know this is a lot to ask, and Paul just smiled and he said, oh, it's a lot to ask. And he grabs it and he signs the back of it. He looks at the front of it and he goes, Smashing English Sound, eh? And I said, well, come on. Really nice about it and joked about it. And he gave it back and we finally just, let him go and said, thank you so much, blah, blah. Walked back over to our table. And unfortunately, the big drama, this is the story I tell when people say, I hear Paul McCartney's an asshole. Well, this is the story I tell them to show. No, he's not. Because I sat back down at the table and my mom was there and she said, this is amazing. It can go in our Aerovons scrapbook, blah, blah. And Nolan goes, oh, no, that's not going in a scrapbook. I asked him for it, and that's staying with me. Other three of us, the drummer and the rhythm player and myself, are just crestfallen. We're just like, we got to meet one of the Beatles and we got an autograph and we can't have it. And so, I was more angry and frustrated than thinking sensibly. And I said, give me 3 more cards. And waited until the lights came up at the end of the night. It had to be 2 in the morning. The lights came up and everybody started coming out of the dining room area. And I just walked right up to him. I said, Paul, I'm so sorry. Our bass player got a little bit selfish with the autograph. And Paul said, do you have a pen? And I said, yeah. And I gave a pen and 3 cards, and he got down on one knee, and the other knee he used to write his autograph 3 times. And looked up at me and handed him to me. And I said, Paul, thank you so much.
That's fantastic.
But to this day, it is framed and in my home. So,
wow. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Before his family moved to Florissant, Missouri during his teenage years, Tim Reynolds had already lived several places. He was born in Germany and lived as a young child in Alaska, Indiana, and Kansas. After leaving Missouri, Tim has lived in New Mexico, North Carolina, and Virginia, where he met Dave Matthews and became an integral part of Dave's band.
When I went to this workshop, I was prepped. I mean, now I would look at that and go, well, you were kind of partially prepped, buddy, but you could sure play bebop really fast, and it sounds very impressive to a bunch of other younger guys. I mean, Nora was probably in his teens. Another drummer, Johnny Gilmore, also played in TR3 on some of the records. It's just all these people, Norman Pors, Otis, guitar player, played at White ST, playing bebop. It was just an amazing, little scene.
You can hear my talk with guitar great Tim Reynolds in Season 1 of Frets. Well, you met like the Hollies, and there was other people at the time that you met.
Yeah, I can tell you about that, but it's your show and your time. So you tell me when when I should tell you about those things, because these are just all amazing events that come right out of a bad 50s rock and roll movie that you believe was even possible.
Wow.
So.
Well, the band did some sightseeing and shopping around London while you were there too. Probably like Carnaby Street and King's Road.
Sure did. Yeah. In fact, the picture with George Harrison, I don't know if you've seen that. If not, I can send it to you. I was wearing, we were all wearing coats that we had just gotten from Carnaby Street. That was a big deal because it was the time of swing in London. So, yeah. nothing but flowers and Nehru jackets and all that good stuff.
Psychedelia.
Yeah, it really was. We were hearing all sorts of great music in the clubs that we weren't hearing over the U.S. And so it was very cool from a standpoint of just the environment. True, yeah.
But money was tight, so you guys smoked like an inexpensive brand of cigarettes. I think Players cigarettes or
Player cigarettes, you got it. Yeah, we couldn't afford the American ones. They were through the roof over there. So, yeah, and it was tough, kind of being over there for that long. When we came back to actually record, we spent 3 months there, and there was no place to eat. I mean, food back then was unbelievably bad. American palate, you would see I was thinking, I just want a hamburger, something normal. And we went in some place called Wimpy. They had these places called
Wimpy Burger.
Wimpy bars. Yep. And it was anything but a hamburger. I don't know what it was, but it was awful. So we had a lot of trouble with food over there. We just didn't like it. They would have vending machines with kidney pies in the vending machine. And so it was like, this is horrible. But other than that, the environment was pretty neat. Other than the fact that the people there were a lot healthier than we are because they walked everywhere. You know, we would say, is there a pharmacy around here? And somebody would say, oh, yeah, it's right to the end of the street. Make a right. You'll be right there. And I'd say, so we don't need a taxi. Oh, no. So you'd walk down the street, make a right, and a pharmacy would be like half a mile. So they're used to walking over there for sure. And they were really.
So I'm trying to remember the chronology, though, because you went over there for your first visit, and did you brought the demos, but did you, I know they wanted you to go back to the States and write some more material.
Yeah.
But did you record on the first trip or just?
On the first trip, we got, they agreed to sign us, and they let us take a tour. They said, would you like to see where you're going to be recording? We're like, sure, yeah. So a couple days, literally after meeting Paul at that speakeasy club, we had a meeting we were supposed to go to Abbey Road and get a tour. And we went in, and there was like an old guard up front, and he was like, I'm gonna take these boys through and show this stuff, blah, blah. As they started, the guy started to walk down the hall, out comes Mal Evans. So Mal Evans, wow. You know who he is, right?
Yeah.
So I knew him because of not only reading about their road manager Mal, but also from seeing Help about 800 times and seeing him come up out of the water and all that stuff. So I saw him. He kind of appeared out of nowhere, and I said, are you Mal Evans? And he's just like this big, nice guy, like a big old bear.
Yeah.
And I think he was really excited that someone recognized him. and he said, yeah. And I said, Mal, you gotta tell me, were you really in that freezing water and Help? And he said, oh yeah. And I said, how did you not freeze to death? And he said, lots and lots of coffee. That's all. So he, once we broke the ice that way, he said, what's up? And the guard said, well, we're taking these guys for a tour, and through the studio, they're going to be recording here eventually. And Mal said, I'll take them. So we started following him. So he takes us directly downstairs into the infamous Studio Two. And when we follow him into this gigantic room, the first thing my drummer says is, Tom, look. And I look over, and at the far end of the studio is Ringo's magical mystery tour drum set that says love on the drum cover, so the great orange cover. And I said, oh my God. And, and Mal's not really paying attention. He's just talking. He's going, so over here's where we keep all the mics and stuff. And Mike and I are going, my God, that's his drum set. So there's these sub conversations going on. And we got to the end at the bottom of the steps that go up to the control room. And Bob, while Mal is just rattling on, Bob looks at me and goes, "That looks like Harrison." And it did look like George Harrison, but you couldn't really tell. It's a shaded control room window way up high. It did kind of look like his outline. And Mal's talking, and I said, "Excuse me, Mal, is that George?" And Mal goes, "Yeah, he's working on his own project right now. He was doing an electronic project called Wonderwall." And
Yeah.
and so I said, "Mal, is there any chance that he would come down and we could meet him?" Mal said, "Nah, yes, he's really busy right now." We just kind of said, "Okay." So Mal's back to saying, "No, here's where we put the. And I just said, "What the hell?" And I looked up at the window and I pointed at the window, at the figure in the window, and I made a motion like, "Come down," like that. The figure looking down at us now turns his back and vanishes from the window. And Bob goes, "Why did you do that? Oh man, why'd you do that?" But before I can answer, the control room door opened at the top of the steps. Out comes George, and he says, "Are you with a magazine?" And I said, "No, we're a group. We're going to be recording here." And he goes, "Oh, all right," and starts walking down the steps toward us. And Bob goes, "He's coming down."
Wow.
We were just dying. So he comes down and puts his hand out and says, "Hi, I'm George." And I said, "Hi, I'm Tom." So, we all shook hands. He was really nice. My mom was standing there too. She had a camera, and she was talking like he was one of us, like we're a bunch of kids. She said, "George, do you mind before you guys start talking if," and she holds the camera up, and he said, "No, it's all right." Like, so she starts taking snaps. And my first question to George is, "George, do you remember how you got the Sound of Nowhere Man?" And he said, "Yeah, it was two Fenders, I believe. It was Stratocasters." And I said, "Stratocasters?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "But you had to have like the toggle switch like jammed between the middle and the front pickup, right?" And he said, "Yeah, I believe so. And it was compressed a bit up in the box," he said. And I said, "We met Paul a couple nights ago at Speakeasy, and he said it was a Gretsch." And George goes, "No, it was just so
George had the real story.
The real story. So after talking to him, that was our big deal. And we ended up going back to St. Louis to begin this quest of writing films. But like I tell everybody, I don't know what the problem was. I don't know why they didn't have fax machines back then. I don't know. I came back over a second time. The group stayed in St. Louis. And that's when I ended up meeting the Hollies and seeing the Beatles record Your Blues. And
that's mind blowing. I mean, I'm sure every time you hear like Your Blues now, you're just thinking, I was there. I was witnessing this.
That's really true. It brings back that evening to me every time I do hear that song, because they had said, "Tom, are you bored there in the hotel while we do all this business stuff?" And I said, "This is fine." He said, "Well, would you like to go to a recording session? Let me see who's recording this week." And they read off of Frank something. I don't know any of these names. And all of a sudden he says, "The Hollies." And I went, "Oh my gosh, I would love very much to see the Hollies." So he said, "I'll set it up." So I went there and, went to, that was Studio 3, the smaller studio, and knocked on the door, went in, and they said, "Oh, yes, we're the director, the producer, Ron Richards, was there." And he said, "Oh, yes, yeah, I heard you're coming. Let's have a seat on the couch." And this Hollies were in the studio, and they were doing a vocal, and they were having problems with it, or he was having problems with it, and they kept doing it over and over. And I just kind of sat there, and it was an amazing thing, because I was a big Hollies fan. Ron said, "Boys, will you come in the control room? I want to hear what you're doing right here." So next thing I know, I'm on a couch in a small control room, and all of the Hollies are standing in front of me, and Ron goes, let me hear each other. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And they sing this chorus. It's a song called Man with No Expression that was released years later, apparently. And I'm hearing the Hollies from 3 feet away, a cappella.
Oh, man.
So I had this little visit with them, and I felt like after a while I didn't want to overstay my welcome. I just said, listen, this is really great. Thank you, Ron, because they were back in the studio again. I said, Ron, I'm going to split. Thank you for letting me come in and all that stuff. And I think I went to the bathroom, and I came out of the bathroom, and I went, for some reason, I went back to that control room. There was nobody there. And all of a sudden, Tony Hicks comes down the hall and says, are you going to the pub with us? And I went, he said, come on. So he has this little like MG sports car and drives me down the street. I sit at a table at a little pub with Graham Nash and a whole bunch of them. And they start asking me, and I said, we just got signed, we're going to blah, blah, blah. And so that was an amazing experience. He drives me back to the studio. There's like girls in front of the studio. They're screaming and wanting autographs. They come up to me for one. I said, no, I'm not in the group. I don't back in the studio with Tony. And I said, Tony, God, that must be amazing to live like that, because now it gets really old. So
you get used to that.
He said, I said, I noticed looking from the control room, those Vox amp heads are different. They're strange. He said, yeah, they were made for us. You want to come in? And I went in the studio before they were all getting ready to get serious again. And he said, you try it out. And I forgot what kind of guitar he had, but I picked his guitar up and was, fooling with the controls and strumming some simple stuff. And all of a sudden, I started just kind of teasing him by playing the beginning of On a Carousel. So I'm going down, down, down. And all of a sudden, I hear drums come in and bass come in, and I'm playing guitar. The Hollies drummer and whoever their bass player is playing, backing me up for about 8 bars, and I'm like, I'm too nervous. I can't do this. I was just freaked out.
You're being accompanied by the Hollies. That's great.
I showed, I played a couple things on his guitar briefly before I put it back down. I started to play Bus Stop, and I played and said no, like this. And I see. I don't know why I had it figured out wrong. So thanked him again. And then the Beatles Your Blues thing started. I went out. I know. I went to the guard up front. I said, well, that was really nice meeting them and all that. I just was making conversation. I said, what you got? This is probably 7 o'clock by now or something. I said, what you got going on tonight? And this older guy goes, well, the boys are here.
The boys.
So, and I said, oh, God. I said, so I think, is it okay if I go downstairs to the canteen, grab a soda? And they say, yeah, sure. So I'm walking down this main hall. It's 7 o'clock. Most of the studio is cleared out now. And I'm walking down the hall, and I hear this horrendously loud, they're playing Your Blues. But I don't know that. I just hear a bunch of loud guitars. And I'm walking down the hall, and I get, about 10 feet from where the sound is coming from. And I realize it's coming from dead in front of me to my right. And the only thing there is a glass. It's a little room with a big glass window. So it's got a door and a big glass window. And all 4 Beatles are in this room. And I am probably 4 feet from them all. And they're all playing Your Blues. And their eyes, they look like they were high. Their eyes were half closed. And I am frozen. For a minute, I'm thinking, do I keep walking or do I just, so I'm just standing there like an idiot. And they're playing this thing. And you couldn't keep your eyes off them. They were literally, I'm looking in my room now. Yeah, it's like from me to where my living room lamp is, and that's how far all 4 of them are from me. Playing really loud. It was really loud.
It's fantastic.
At the end, when they finally had one record was that they did somebody from the control room, which is connected to that room, yelled through the window something. And John said, "That's okay as long as you got the voice." And everybody started laughing. And then by now the spell was broken. They're all awake because and I just got out of there. I just quickly down the hall. Whenever I hear that, that's why it sounds like that. They're in a little room. It's a little room. So you can hear it in his voice and you can hear it in the track. They just wanted to do something different. So they decided, let's do this in this room in here. So it was my good fortune. So.
Girl, I made my mind up that this love is here to stay. Surely we could find love if you turn your head my way. Everything's gonna be alright. I don't know about that. Everything's gonna be alright.
Looking to buy a guitar, an amp, pedals? Find great deals on all of these as well as audio and recording gear at reverb.com. You can also sell your gear through Reverb. They have great articles about music gear and bands. And Reverb believes music makes the world a better place. That's why they created Reverb Gives, that provides youth music education programs all over the world with the instruments they need to make music. Link to Reverb through Frets with DJ Faye in the show notes for this episode.
Hey, this is Tom Hartman of the Aerovons. You're listening to Frets with DJ Faye.
Well, when you guys were recording, I mean, in addition to meeting the Beatles, I mean, you got to work with engineers like Jeff Emmerich and Alan Parsons. I mean, that's huge. It's like sort of legends in the studio.
Yep, we were actually recording for maybe a week, and we were sitting eating lunch in this canteen downstairs, and somebody came up and said, well, you boys certainly have the right engineer for you. And I said, yeah, what, Norman? And he wasn't really the engineer. He was assigned to be the producer. And I said, Norman Smith? Yeah. And he said, yeah. And I went, oh. And they said, you know who Norman Smith is, right? And I said, no. And he said, he is the engineer on every Beatles song up to Revolver. And we just died. We had no idea this guy, who was older, was the Beatles engineer. So, naturally, when we see him on the next session, I'm like, Norman, you were the engineer on No Reply? Yeah, okay. Yeah, and you recorded I Want to Hold Your Hand?
Wow.
A guy asked me if I don't want to hold your hand. I said, what did you do to make those guitars sound like that? And, he said there was nothing unusual, although this is unusual. He said the mics were about 6 feet from the amps, which is unheard of today. But I said, and they were playing very, very loud. And I said, okay, great. So we were pleased to have Norman on board. Yeah, and the others as well.
Well, after recording, there was some trouble or tension within the band as far as certain members having to deal with some personal issues. So,
yep. Yeah, we actually went over there, despite the shot of 3 of us on the album cover. We went over with 4, and we had just gotten that 4th member just before, maybe 2 months before we left for England, and because we lost our long-standing rhythm guitarist. Because he was right in the midst of Vietnam. He was pretty scared to death he was going to get drafted. So he didn't want to take the trip and get drafted and mess everything up. So we were in a panic, and we hired somebody on a recommendation that was new in St. Louis from Ann Arbor, who was a good-looking and very good singer and good guitar player. He was more like a Jeff Beck type hard rock guy with Marshalls and a Les Paul. And, the guy that referred him to us, I said, yeah, but we're not that kind of band. He said, he doesn't care. He'll play anything. Very, a classy guy who's well-dressed, rich family. And but funny, had a great sense of humor, and we thought, wow, how lucky can we get? And when we got to England, it was about, I don't know, probably 3 weeks in that we got a call from EMI saying, you know, your member Phil came to EMI today, the offices, and said that he was upset that Tom was not allowing him to record any of his material. And so they said we asked him to show us some of his material, and we told him that we agreed with Tom. Probably. And so when we found that out, we confronted him and sent him home. So that left just three of us at the beginning of the crisis. Yeah.
Well, in the days since the Aerovons returned from England for the final time, you've stayed in the business, writing, recording, producing, everything from like commercials to your own projects.
Yeah, I really haven't stopped since trying to learn to lead to gingerbread. I've been very fortunate. I had kind of given up on everything. It's funny, but I didn't even tell people about the whole experience in England for a long time. I ended up going to SIU Edwardsville and during film. And it was only once I met a couple guitar player buddies there that I started to tell them about the whole English thing. And they were like, yeah, right. I said, come over to the house. And I showed them pictures of England, and they were just dying. And I had the album because I still have a couple pressings from EMI that were test pressings. So I always had that I could show somebody. But yeah, I pretty much got out of music and got kind of lost in film. And then we moved down to Miami, and I graduated. I did a little film, little documentary there. I realized it needed music, so I wrote a little score to it, and they said, you want to do a commercial? And next thing you know, I was doing commercials right and left, which I really enjoyed because the guys that were hiring me mainly were young ad guys that loved rock and pop. And I said, you know what, you could, what's the saying, what's the slogan of this place? And I'd say, you could make a song that went like this. It would sound like a little mini hit record. It wouldn't sound like a and they were like, I love that. And and I was just getting hired right and left, and everything I did sounded like a little single. It was because I refused to say things like, we're open every night or any of that.
Right.
It was always something odd. Just home is where the heart is for Chris Ever, one of her clubs, that some living place or a radio station in Tampa, 96 something, and so their motto was "Let's 96." So I wrote a song. It didn't sound like traditional advertising, so I did pretty well for a long time in the 80s and 90s down here. Yeah, so I've always stayed active in it. Yeah, and I think Bob, the guy who didn't go with us to England, he did real well in St. Louis because he was the head of that company, Dent Squad in St. Louis.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Been of that for years, and now he's retired and just paints and takes photographs and does odd stuff. His birthday was yesterday, and we still write and talk to each other from time to time. So unfortunately, Mike and Billy both passed away, so some heart attacks. So yeah.
Well, Record Store Day 2024 is approaching soon on April 20th, and I know that Joe Schwab at Euclid Records has copies of the Aerovons' Resurrection, now available on vinyl for the first time.
Yeah, Joe has been a real hero in all this and has, been a champion of trying to get this on vinyl. I can't tell you how many emails I've had over the years, because it came out in 2003, I think, on CD. And once it came out, from then on, there's been kind of an endless stream of emails from time to time saying, hey, is this ever going to be available on vinyl? And, I didn't have any control over that, so I couldn't answer them. And this came up maybe about a year ago. Joe started writing Mark Stratford in England, who was responsible for getting the rights to have the EMI album released on CD. and telling Mark and myself that he's on a mission to get this done. And he did. He did a great job. I got some copies the other day of it, and it looks great. Yeah, he did a super job.
Well, I have one waiting for me. I ordered mine, and they've got it over at the store, so I just need to get over there. Well, I'll definitely be over there on Record Store Day. So,
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I just want to say thanks to everybody who has, expressed an interest in this very old story. And I'm very appreciative of all the support and the kind words that I've gotten about the album and about the follow-up a little more, which you can hear on Spotify or Apple Music or the usual places. That came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I'm real proud of that. So thanks for the support out there. And thank you for expressing an interest in doing this interview.
yeah, it's an amazing story, and it's an amazing album. I've got to tell you, I've been listening to, I don't have my vinyl yet, but yeah, it is available to listen to, and it's really great. And
Thank you so much.
such an amazing story. Well, Tom
Yeah.
Hartman, thank you
It's
again.
meant to be. Yeah, thank you so much for your interest.
All right. Well, thanks, man.
Talk to you soon.
See you,
Stay
Tom.
well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's a new world of you, and I'm just a stranger here. It's a new thing to do, and I'm being quite sincere. Though I know I'm far from home, I'm going to stay till tomorrow. Without cost or obligation, I will turn my resignation into you. Without sorrow or reason to be blue. It's a
Thanks for tuning in to Frets with DJ Faye. If you like the show, you can subscribe for free at most podcast platforms. Hope you'll join me again next time. Stay tuned.